What is going on, Secondhand Talent family? It is your boy Steiner here with another episode of Secondhand Talent. Thank you to Mark Spoosta for the shirts. Thank you to Luke Chu for the lo-fi tip. Thank you to Tenacious Toys for the desk candy. And thank you, of course, to this week's guest, Joe Marcinek. Joe, welcome back to the show.
Man, thanks for having me back on. I appreciate you.
Oh man, it's so great to have you back on. Last time, to remind our viewers and listeners, last time you were on the show was season 3, episode 2, and that was, I don't know when this is going to air, but that was a while ago, and a lot's been going on since then.
Oh yeah, things are crazy and showing no signs of slowing down. So we're just trying to hold on.
And you already know what it means, so we're going to get right into the nitty gritty of it. You know, when we decided we were going to do another interview, I went back to the tape and I wanted to see what we had talked about last time to make sure we talked about, new, more prescient things. And one of the things that I had said, which I thought was really interesting at the time, we were promoting your 9th studio record, One River Street. And I recalled saying, and this was confirmed by the tape, we'll be here for the 9th, we'll be here for the 10th, we'll be here for the 11th. And I think it's
My man.
fortuitous to have you back in season 5. Here, we know this is going to air in December. So with a new record coming out, as of now, planned at the time of this taping in April of 2026. I think it's pretty incredible that we're having you back on now in anticipation of your 10th record.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it. So this one will be called The Groove Session. And little just backstory on this record.
Please.
So in October of 2022, I did 3 separate recording sessions, one in Denver, one in LA, and one in Western Mass. That one might have been November, but it was all like fall of 2022. And it's crazy how I had so much material to record, basically 3 different albums. It's just wild that it all came together. And I think part of that was just, still having a lot of free time from the pandemic to sit around and write songs. And then having these different things to write for. So as on One River Street, that was with Alan Evans and Nate Edgar and Chris Yunker. And I knew it was going to be more in the kind of, I don't know, my classic Slink era, which is my version of the funky jazz kind of thing. But it was real heavy guitar. I think there was a guitar solo on every song. It was really, it was a psychedelic, more funky than almost any of my other stuff. So for this one, the Groove Session, it wasn't planned because obviously this was all recorded in such a short amount of time. I couldn't have planned it beforehand. But on this record, there's not a single guitar solo. There's no guitar solos. I wrote all the melodies and I play the melodies, so you'll hear a lot of guitar still on it. But I had the opportunity to work with this phenom, Jesus Molina. And people know him from the NAMM show and all these crazy videos where he's playing, technically amazing daredevil feat on the piano. So he's just this virtuoso piano player. So I knew I wanted to feature him. And then I had our buddy here from Chicago, Greg Spiro, who now lives in LA. He's got a studio. At that time, it was called the Tiny Room Studios. So that's where we recorded this one in Inglewood. Now he's transitioned to the Recording Academy, which is an even more amazing studio, I think in Venice, California. And then for the rhythm section, I teamed up with my longtime buddies, Manny Sanchez on drums and Ronnie Sanchez, his brother, on bass. They have a band called Groove Session, one word. So I've been working with those guys since, I think, 2017. They used to be a power trio. And the first show I did with them was like their last show as a power trio. And at that time, their guitarist had just left. So my model is always doing a different lineup all the time. They had just lost their guitar player. It was just like this perfect fit. So we'd team up, at least 3 or 4 times a year. I'd go out to California and we'd do runs up and down the coast. And so I've been working with them a bunch over the years and wanted to get them on something. And this was kind of just the perfect storm of when I was able to bring them together. So afterwards, I'm thinking about what am I going to name the album? It's all instrumental music, so it's like you can be a little bit more free with what you call the songs and the album name. And I was like, it's the Groove Session. Now, two different words, groove session,
Yeah.
as as a tribute to those guys, but also sums up kind of how that session went. Because it ends up being 8 songs, but I think we recorded 6 songs, and then one of them's 2 different takes, which one's fast and one's slow, and then we split one of the songs up. So that's how we got 8. But we did it all in one day. Most of them were like 2 or 3 takes. It was crazy. We just went in there and we were grooving. So that's kind of how it all came together, and been sitting on this music, as you know, for a little while. So I'm really
Hmm.
excited to release it because I don't know, it's some of the best playing on any of my albums so far. So, and as if that wasn't enough, then I go in November of 2024. I did a show at Lincoln Hall right after Thanksgiving. It was my band, Liquid Soul, Chicago stalwarts. And then the opener was a violinist from Nashville named Tracy Silverman, amazing violinist. So, with the nature of my band, I met him that day and he's like, "Hey, why don't you sit in?" I'm like, "Sure." So then when it came time for my set, I'm like, "Tracy, why don't you sit in with us?" He ended up playing the whole set with us. We had never met before. He probably didn't know any of the songs, and he was a perfect fit. So Tracy ends up playing on 3 songs on the album, recorded afterwards, but kind of like, recorded his stuff and we overdubbed it on. And then also on that gig, I had Howard Levy, the amazing harmonica player from Bela Fleck. And I've been lucky to work with Howard a few times now. And so I was just hearing this sound of guitar, violin, and harmonica. So I asked Howard and I was like, "Hey, you want to play on the record too?" So he ends up playing on those same 3 songs. So it's really cool to hear this unique harmony of guitar, violin, and harmonica, and they just blend really well together. So
You
yeah,
know,
just became an all-star affair.
that's a, I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. It's a totally exemplary of how you put together your live music career. And it's amazing to hear like how spontaneous events kind of create this cacophony of creativity. One River Street was a lot of fun to listen to, and it was really interesting for me to hear you say that, you kind of took a back seat as far as playing, lead guitar or solos goes on this record. And I got to ask, what does it feel like hearing these, world-class musicians that you were just talking about playing music that you wrote?
It almost becomes like overwhelming to the point where it's like white noise because you try to think about it, and I've been just extremely blessed and lucky to have played with, we got to work with Bernie Worrell and record with him before he passed away. I've had Melvin
R.I.P.
Steeles and George Porter both on a record called the Dead Funk Summit, where they played on the whole album. And it's like you say these names out loud and they're playing my original music. It's not like I'm part of their band playing the Grateful Dead or something. It's like these guys are on my album playing the songs I wrote. Like I have no frame of reference to how to process that. It's just like unbelievable. But the one thing I would say is like it gives you maybe a little bit of validation that all right, if these legends are respecting something you're doing, then you should keep doing it to the fullest extent of your soul because that's what it's about. Like I'm writing this music, and in the grand scheme of things, is it going to be the greatest jazz album? Is it going to be the worst jazz album? None of that really matters. It's me. It's your voice and your personality coming through.
I think that's a great point. I think it's so important to acknowledge support wherever it comes from. Be that in the musicians who choose to play your music, or the people who choose to be guests on your show, or whatever affiliations there are, to be grateful for them and to recognize that, like you said, to borrow your turn of phrase, that you don't have a frame of reference for it. I mean, that's kind of an awesome thing that, at our age, not to date us, but to have things occur like this where we still surprise our own selves with our creative efforts. I mean, that's a pretty beautiful thing.
Oh, there's nothing like it, and it's like it keeps you going because you have that. You're still a fan, you still love it. There's a
Mm,
passion there for it. You're not doing it for money. You're not doing it as a job. Now, for me, I'm lucky to where it's become my job, but this never set out as, I was teaching and doing other odds and ends to make the bills meet until this kind of caught up. And I know for you, you're still working at it, but I'm sure every year, you see it going up and up and up. And that's why we do it, is because we love it. And I think when you do something from a pure intention, it resonates with other people, because most other people get caught up into something that they don't love anymore, or they're doing just as a job. And if you get a taste of something that's like, ooh, this is pure, this is done just for the love of it, I want to do that. I want to be a part of that. I want to meet those people, other passionate people that are doing their thing. Like you with your show, you're doing it out of love. So it's going to resonate with other people. You're not doing it just to sell a product or something.
Well, I really appreciate the kind words, and one of the things that is never lost on me. We're gonna be winding out season 5 somehow with 99 episodes,
Wow.
and not a single time is it lost on me just how grateful I am for each and every person who takes time out of their day to sit down and talk to me. It's a real privilege that people are willing to take time out of their busy schedules just to have these conversations and tell these stories, and talk about music in a way that shows the true nature of it, which is that it's something that we care about.
Yep.
And I think that that's something, pivoting slightly, that's pretty evident in your live show, that you put a lot of care into what you put on stage. And I'll ask you this, like you mentioned before, your MO is kind of putting a different band together, or various lineups together in different locales and different dates. Um, what is that process really like? I mean, how does that become a sustainable model? Is it strictly through just developing these relationships and saying, "Hey, I'm going to be here on X date, and are you around?" Like, what's the process? Because since you were last on the show, just for a little context for our listeners and viewers, since you were last on the show, you've been gigging all over the place with all sorts of incredible musicians. And it's really, and some covers, but so much of your original music I got to see recently, Park West, and it's it's wild that this is something, with the output that you've had, it seems to almost be self-contradictory that your method works. I'd love to hear more about that process, especially as an independent artist.
Yeah, I can give you a really good micro and macro story. So um, this will be coming out in December, so I'll tell you a story from earlier in the year to the listeners, but recent for when we're talking. So I just did a show in this will be March of 2025 with Melvin Seals at the Hot Monk in Sebastopol. So this is going to be the small story. And then I'm going to give you the big story, which is kind of how the band started as basically a side project. It wasn't, I was playing with Fresh Hops at the time. That was kind of the main thing. We were touring regionally. And so this little experiment that I called the Joe Marcinek Band was really kind of just able to like grow in a petri dish with such a strong foundation that it wasn't being relied on to pay the bills. It wasn't being relied on for anything other than purely to have fun with it. And, a lot of times I would either break even or almost lose money, but I didn't care. It was just something fun. I wasn't going out drinking and buying drugs. It was like, this was my vice. And so I was able to kind of put all these resources into building something kind of from the ground up. So where it started with this, it was, I always say it's Pete Koopmans was the drummer I went to high school with. He went to Berkeley, got really good, moved back to Northwest Indiana. And I was like, hey, let's put a band together. We didn't have any other members in mind, and I didn't know what to call it. So I was like, well, since I'm doing all the work, I'll call it my name just because it's easy to call. Hey, we're playing at the corner bar, Joe Marcinek Band. Let's get the best jazz fusion bass player we know, Buddy Pearson, and whoever else was free. And so as you keep doing this, then of course Buddy gets busy and he's got to do something else. And then we start expanding into Chicago. That's when Janice from Family Groove started playing with us. And it would just like, it would start snowballing. And it was really this tiny little idea that kept growing. But in the early days, it wasn't meant to be my main band. It wasn't meant to make me money. So it was just like, keep pushing this thing down the hill, and it keeps getting bigger. And as you know, once those things start getting a little bigger, then it's like, all right, now it is taking more time. Now I kind of do have to focus on this. Now it could be my living. And then we started flying in guests. So like Steve Mullitz from Particle was our kind of first national guest. And then we kind of subconsciously, or there's no way I could have known this at the time, but by bringing in a bigger, artist or guest artist, he brought more attention, which then gave us the opportunity to play a bigger room, which then this model allowed us to, I say tour, but it's more like just playing shows in different areas. So like we could go to Indianapolis. Now we've got Steve's name, so we're going to sell more tickets. No one knows Joe Marcinek Band if you've never played there. But if you say Joe Marcinek Band with Steve Mullitz, all of a sudden you can bring some attention to the gig. So then you move out, you go up to Wisconsin, Michigan, all around, eventually go to Colorado. We meet Joey Porter. Jason Hand from String Cheese gets involved. Shortly after, I just, out of the blue, reached out to Bernie Royale and shot him an email. And he was down to do it. And so I think at the time, I've literally been doing this almost 15, 20 years now, but you don't realize it at the time, because it'd be like, I do one big gig and then the next 2 months I'm playing more local gigs, kind of just trying to regroup and set up for the next big one. Where now it's like every weekend something crazy. I'm in Vegas, then I'm going to New Orleans, then it's down in Florida, each one with a heavy hitter lineup. So now you're seeing this, what my buddy Rick King calls 10-year overnight sensation. You've been building, but it's like one step up, then you got to regroup a little bit. Then you go up, then you come back down, where now it's kind of just keeps going up and up. So to bring us back to the micro story, the micro story I was going to tell when it started. So on Monday night, I'm flying back from Delaware to California, and I know I've got that Saturday off. So it's a Monday going to a Saturday, short little window. I know I've got some shows coming up with Melvin Seals. So I was like reaching out to Melvin. I just text him, hey buddy, we should get together and run over some of these tunes. At the same time, I just randomly happened to come across the Hop Monk, which is a local venue to where I'm living now. They had the Saturday night off. So the idea goes off. Wait a minute, Hop Monk's open, Melvin's open. I wonder if I could, I don't know. We're going to rehearse, might as well play a show anyways. That's what we love to do. So Melvin's free, Hop Monk's free. Crazy idea. I say, hey, well, think we can pull off the show? The Hop Monk goes, if you got Melvin involved, let's take a shot. Let's see how it goes. So of course, me, I've got a huge network of amazing musicians I'm lucky to work with. So I called up, Jeremy, Melvin's drummer. He was able to do it. We got Angeline Saris on bass. Scott Guberman came. My buddy Chris Hogue came to play saxophone. Jennifer Freeburn was singing with us. Bella Rain came and sat in. So within the span of a week, I organized the venue. I organized all the musicians. We got the ticket links on sale. We got artwork. And then you just go to work promoting it. And so I just called it a pop-up show since we only had a week. But we ended up selling, 200 tickets in 5 days or something.
Wow.
And that's kind of how it works. And no one at home really sees all the work that goes into it. But I'm working basically all day long. When the moment I wake up, you're checking emails, you're emailing promoters, you're booking hotel rooms, you're booking flights, you're making sure ads go on. I'm wearing all the hats, so I'm doing everything. You're trying to set up the load-in time. If there's backline gear, we're organizing that. In between trying to practice and write new songs. So it's almost you're at a deficit because there's not enough time in the day, but you're just doing the best you can to make sure that you get everything going.
Well, that's one of the reasons we have artists such as yourself on the show is because there is such a thing as built-in secondhand talent. And, if secondhand talent are all of the people and factors that go into creating live music, well, if that's, booking and management and that's, creating art and that's, doing social media and promotion and you're wearing, as you said, all of those hats yourself, then you are your own secondhand talent, which is why we love featuring artists such as yourself on the show because it is so much work. And I recall about a year ago from the time of this taping, I was heading to a show I was producing, and I remember having this thought. We were mid production for season 4 at the time, I believe, and I just had this thought where I was like, it's about 10 a.m. I was on my way from Chicago to Kalamazoo, and doors were at 8. And it was a long day. I wound up getting chased around downtown by a crackhead with a crowbar.
Oh,
It's Kalamazoo. It is what
crazy
it.
streets of Kalamazoo,
Oh
Michigan.
yeah, oh yeah. It's a zoo. So I just remember having this thought that, wow, nobody knows that, and even by the time I get there, doors are at 8, that venue's gonna be packed, with all of the people from the bartenders to the stage managers, to the LDs, to the audio guys, to the band doing sound check, to the crew, the amount of manpower, the amount of people it takes to pull off live music, not to mention all of the people who went into designing and creating all of the instruments and technology that are being used, as
Oh yeah.
well as designing and pipelining the merch that's being sold at the merch table. I mean, even the things that you see, are not just the result of the person who's purveying it at the time and place where you're at. There's so much that goes into everything on so many levels. And one of the big goals of this platform is to highlight not just the guests, but all the spaces that they occupy.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much that goes into it, and I think that's why we're so lucky to know so many amazing people and have so many amazing other artists in our lives. And that's graphic artists, or like you said, the instrument makers, people that build the instruments, um, and even just the people that show up. It seems like it's being harder and harder just to get people out for a show.
Yeah.
Um, people want to go and see the Billy Strings or Fish or the big bands, but it's like all the other bands are really, really appreciating everyone that comes out, because it's getting harder and harder just to fill even a 100, 200 person room.
Well, we talked about this a lot on the show last in seasons 3 and 4. That one of the biggest issues that and who knows where we'll be at the time this interview airs, but the live music industry, one of the biggest issues that it's been facing has been the lack of advanced ticket sales. It's a real it's a real problem, and like you said, when you're an individual, or rather self-contained unit, as far as marketing machine plus band plus manager plus all of the other things that go into it, well, then A, you run the risk of overexerting yourself, but B, you are kind of handicapped by what's available. And you can't rely on door sales, and you can't reach into people's minds to buy tickets. And what we're seeing a lot of right now at the time of this taping is these tours coming out where it's 2 or 3 acts that should sell out a 500 to 1,000 person room on their own, that are putting themselves together for a 12 or 1,400 cap room, and they're still barely sold. And it's a real problem. And I gotta ask, I recall at the last show, the turnout, at Park West was phenomenal. Do you find that you have a better turnout when you're bringing in more local talent? Does that does that impact your decision on asking who to play, not just based on proximity, but also due to popularity?
Yeah, it all goes into it. And what I like to find is the sweet spot of mixing the local with the out of town talent.
Mm,
Sometimes if the whole band's from out of town, that's good, but you don't have the local kind of buzz and word of mouth. But then at the same time, if you use all local players, then we can see them anytime. There's no, burning need to necessarily go this time. So I feel like every show now has to be this big event. So I just turned 40 this year. So for my birthday, I
Yeah,
threw.
happy birthday at the time of this
Thank you.
taping. Happy fucking
Thank you,
birthday.
man.
Yeah.
So I did this show at Martyrs, and it was kind of testing this theory out of. Um, I knew I wanted to work with Melody Trucks, who's the daughter of Butch Trucks, the drummer from the Allman Brothers. We've been playing together for a long time. Through her, I met this band, the Fitzky Brothers, a young duo out of Delaware. So it was like, okay, I'd like to do a show with them, and they want to come out to Chicago. Okay, well, if I had just said, hey, we're going to Martyrs, and this is the band, me, Melody Trucks, and the Fitzkys, I just knew right away it was like, yeah, those are good names, but is it going to really be enough to fill the room? And just going on prior experience, probably not. And that's no fault to me or them. I've been playing in Chicago almost 20 years. I should be
Right.
able to fill the room, but it's what it is. It's hard. Everyone's got so much going on. So I was like, how can I make this an event to make sure that we have a good crowd? And not only for them, being that it was near my birthday, I was like, okay, I can make this, kind of my birthday celebration. So that inherently will bring out some of my friends who wouldn't normally come, also family members, just because they've got stuff going on in their lives. No fault to them. It's hard, but this kind of gives that one extra angle. Okay, now we got Melody, and I'm using my hands a lot. I don't know why. Melody and the Fitzkys. Now we've got Joe's 40th birthday party. Okay, well now, it's going to be something bigger. Let's go crazy with it. So I reached out to Paul from Mr. Blotto, who I'm good friends with, known them for years.
Yeah, shout out Mr. Blotto. They're fucking awesome.
They've been doing it since the 90s,
Yeah, man.
stalwarts.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and same thing. They should be able to sell out Martyrs on their own, no problem. But it's like, okay, now we've got something special brewing here. So we've got the sandwich. And then I was like, I want to call in all my homies who I respect. So it's Calvin Rogers on drums, Sheree Reed on bass, Rick King, PJ, who's my favorite bass player. And then recently, Delvon Lamar, the great organ player, moved to Northwest Indiana. We've been able to work together a little bit. So I asked him about the date. He was free. So it was like, okay, now let's do 3 sets. And just because I love to play so much, I was involved in each of the sets, but in different aspects. So the first one was kind of like tribute to the Allman Brothers with some of the Fitzky Brothers music in there. Then the second one was more my original music. And then the third one was kind of the Grateful Dead, Mr. Blotto mix. So it was cool then to have these 3 different things. I was playing guitar on all of them, but I played some keyboards with Blotto at the end. And then it was cool to have Paul and Mark from Blotto sit in at the end of the first set and the second set. And then Melody sat in with Blotto. And then Ron Haynes and the Liquid Soul Horns came out, and they were playing with everyone. So it was like we kind of all mixed and mingled. And now all of a sudden you've got all the recipe for an event. Now it's something bigger than just Joe Marcinek Band on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
So I kind of took all these different things, and the formula really worked. We had a packed house. We didn't sell it out, but we were pretty close. And that's with Spafford in town, and I think Garcia's had just opened, and they sold out. So that's a lot of competition.
Yeah, you were competing with a sold-out Graham Les show and a Spafford show on that same night. So to relatively pack the house, even at Martyrs, is pretty fucking incredible. I mean, and that's a testament, I think, to what you're able to string together. My question to you is, though, how sustainable is that if it's that much effort and intricacy that you need to put into curating each show? I mean, is that something that you can continue to carry out, or are you finding that it's just kind of continuing to fall together?
In certain aspects, it's an evolution of what I love and what I've been doing. And being that I like to do this something different every night, different lineups, like I would love for this to be the model going forward, where every night is this big production and it's bringing together all my friends and take this concept into Florida or New Orleans or California. And then to grow it to the point where obviously you don't you can't do it every weekend, every night, because it would just, there's not enough time to do it all. But if you could do this once a month, I think that's very sustainable. So now that I've kind of got proof of concept, now it's just putting it into action.
Mm.
And this is, it's truly what I love. And so it's a labor of love and you enjoy doing it. But if this was it every night, there just wouldn't be enough time to promote it and accurately put the resources to build it together. But if we could plan out a year in advance, we know January we're doing Chicago, February we go to New Orleans, like, and you can plan it out a little bit more. I think, yeah, this is easily a good technique. And you were asking me earlier about like going on tour, basically. And so my kind of model is I'm never really on tour, but I'm always on tour.
Yeah.
Meaning that with the different
I'm always in production mode, even
yeah,
when we're in between production seasons. I get it. Yeah.
right. And you look at a band, they'll have like 10 tour dates, all on a poster, and they're all in a row. We leave on a Friday and we get back 3 weeks from now. Well, being that I have a different lineup all the time, it's hard to do that on the off days. On a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's
Right.
really hard to get people out. So my kind of model is I'll go out for 3 or 4 days in a different region, play with one lineup, and then they'll go home and I'll move on to the next region. And so that's kind of my new touring model. Is it works a little bit better, and it's saves you more, because on those off days you're kind of losing all the money you made.
So you're really pulling in from all angles. You're focusing on more of a hyper regional aspect in addition to being able to plan out like from a calendar perspective on a monthly basis on building on top of the model that you've been developing over the years. So it's a
Yeah.
big combination of things.
Oh yeah. And I'm not very rigid about it to where I'm allowing kind of whatever influence or wherever it's wanting to go, I'm going to follow that.
Yep.
If it made more sense to stay out on the road 20 days in a row, I probably would be doing that. But when I've done that before, it hasn't really worked out. So it's kind of, all right, let's just feel it out and see what kind of makes the most sense.
Yeah, if it works, it works. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So last time we spoke, as I mentioned before, we were talking about your ninth studio album, One River Street, and we have the upcoming album we were just speaking about, which I gotta say, 10th studio album, that in and of itself has got to feel pretty great to that's a milestone, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember like working on the second, and just it's such a big deal because like everyone's ready for your first. You've got those songs, and
Mm.
this is our first album, and it's the raw energy. It's all there, and then you're like, well, shit. Now what do we do? And sometimes you have some songs left over, but usually it's like once that initial block of songs are gone, then like how do we come up with the next batch from scratch?
And the
And
sophomore slump is real.
yeah, and it's just I don't know, it's such an exciting thing when the cannon is empty and you're like, okay, now what do you do? Because there's so many different directions. That blank piece of paper of how is the inspiration going to strike for this one?
Mm.
And for me, it was like basically after three, which that came out. JM3 was 2018, and it seemed like it was going to be every 2 years. From then was kind of like the strategy before the pandemic. It was like, give you enough time to get it ready and then shoot, just go out with it. So as the band started to grow, I kind of like shifted as I was going into 2020. My model for then was going to be every track I was going to do a different studio and a different lineup. And so that one started with the song George, was one I wrote and recorded with George Porter Jr. from the Meters. And we cut that down in Atlanta, I think in like December of 2019. And then early, either January or February of 2020, I had Melvin. Wasn't going to stick with the names, but that was just how those two songs came together. And that was recorded with Melvin Seals in Orlando. So it's like, okay, this could be a different model. It's a little bit easier. You don't have to have a full song ready to go. You can full album ready to go. You can just do one song at a time. And for each recording session, we did just kind of like an unrehearsed improv jam, which was going to be like the B-sides or like a totally different album of just made up music. So every time we'd go into the studio, I had 2 songs coming from it. I was filming it, so it's going to be kind of this whole new series. Then obviously the pandemic hits, and it's like you got to rethink everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just had all the time to write. So I think I had a lot of material. And since then, 2021, I released a record. 2022, I released a record. 3 a record, 4 a record. 2025 a record. So now it kind of feels like the canon is almost empty again. So now I feel like I'm at that exciting stage where it's like, okay, what do I do next? Do I go back to that idea of, because it seems like as artists we love albums, but the machine, the industry, the music industry wants you to release singles. That's what they push more on Spotify. It's easier. No one has attention span for a full album, but it's like you have these 2 things. Like I love albums because that's how I grew up and that's the romantic idea. But should I just go into just, all right, it's way easier, it costs less. Let's just do songs at a time. So I think I'm going to just kind of test out some few ideas going back to the old model and just see what works.
I resemble that remark. I grew up, earlier today at the time of this taping, I was interviewing Dave Eckenberg, who worked during the golden age of television, and as I was mentioning to him, I was raised in the golden age of sitcoms, and I could make these episodes longer, and I could make I could do episodes of just myself or have like a cast of people who talk for 3 hours, but I'm a child of the 90s. I kind of like the idea of episodes and seasons and, everything coming out, set a set time on a certain day of the week.
Yeah.
Like there's something nostalgic about that. And I think as artists, part of what we have to do to keep ourselves going to help sustain and maintain ourselves when we're looking to reload that cannon, to use your metaphor, is to continually do things that remind us that we love what we do.
Yep.
And I like another reason why I resemble that remark is the hardest part for me about the show,
Oh yeah.
the hardest part is we're in, at the time of this taping, in the middle of production for season 5, and we're ending the season with 99 episodes, which is crazy. And we're in this big deluge right now where we're in the process of recording. I think I'm recording 6 episodes this week.
Wow.
And it's really kind of wild and irritating that I have to wait for these episodes to air. It's putting so much work into it so intensely during such a short period of time and really putting all the creativity into making these episodes happen.
Yeah.
And then, I know that this season is going to start airing in August, and this interview is going to air in December, and it's here today in March. It's a little, just kind of like, I just want everybody to see these as
Yeah.
soon as it's done, but like, you
So
know
true, man.
but piggybacking on what you said, like part of the fun is loading the cannon and is
Yeah.
seeing what you can load it with this time around.
Well, and one thing I'll say, since I did all these recordings back in the fall of 2022, I had that same feeling. Was like, man, I'm so excited about this music. I just want to get it out. Like, do I release it all right away? And then I think once that initial kind of like hype over it dies down a little bit, you're able to kind of be at peace with it because you have some quality work. And so you're like, I'm in no rush to put this out. I know it's really good quality.
Mm.
But then the most exciting thing for me has been to go back and rediscover this music and be like, damn, I recorded this 4 years ago. Like, what? This is crazy. It's like, it sounds so good. And you kind of get to fall in love with it all over again.
I'll say, you know what? I'll co-sign that. Because like I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, I went to the tape the last time we spoke to brush up and make sure we didn't double up on any topics. And you know, I found this feeling again. I have just such an immense enjoyment for editing these episodes. It is a laborious and painstaking and
Oh
time
yeah.
intensive process, but at the same time, the pearls of wisdom that I've gleaned from the people who I've had the opportunity to interview on this show makes reviewing these episodes and editing them just an absolute joy. Like, I'm always learning something, and I'll find myself, remembering things from previous guests and quoting them. And actually, going back to your last interview, probably the highest order of compliment I feel like I could ever get. Somebody reached out to me and said they liked the interview so much that they got a copy of One River Street.
No
And
way.
yeah, and I just
Oh shit.
remember, yeah, and I was just
Wow.
like, you know who you are. Shout out to you. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I just remembered this feeling of like, oh, somebody liked the interview enough that they went and checked out the music, and they liked the music enough that they bought the record. Like that's the best fucking feeling I had about the show in a while. This was a while ago, but even still, like, it's those little things that keep me, motivated and going in the between time. I know we have a big break coming up
Yep.
with August. April 9th is our season 4 finale, and then sometime the first week of August is our season 5 premiere. We got a big break coming up, but like, yeah, loading this canon, knowing what's coming up this season,
Hmm.
it's I'm just trying to look at it as building anticipation for something that's going to be really, staggering when it does land, just like I'm sure the album will be.
Oh yeah. And I gotta ask, so 99, does that mean you got something super fun planned for 100? Are you still thinking about it?
At the time of this taping or airing, I can neither confirm or deny that we have something big planned for our 100th episode. But yeah, I will say this.
Oh, oh,
At
oh.
the time of this taping, we're at the precipice of Secondhand Talent's second birthday. And I would like to say I have the utmost gratitude for every single person who's listening and watching and who's been a part of the show. Um, it's one thing to do this, and it's another thing to just see just a continual. It doesn't matter how gradual it is, but just a continual incline of interest and support. It just means so much to me and to Steiner and to everybody at Secondhand Talent. And yes, that is a roundabout way of saying we may have something special planned for our 100th episode. But again,
Indeed.
to think that we're, at our 100th episode will be airing around our third birthday,
Yeah. Oh
which
yeah.
is, and again, 100 episodes. It's really, and
Amazing. Congrats.
thank you, man, and it's been magnificent to have you on, not one but twice, like I said last time. The 9th, the 10th, and then hopefully the 11th, the 12th as well. And remind us, when is the album set to come out at the time of this taping, and where can folks find your music?
So I guess it'll already be out because it's coming April 29th, but 2025.
Oh, well, in that case, folks, check out the album. The link will be in the comments.
Check it
And
out.
where
And
can where
just
can
the
folks find
website,
your stuff?
joemarcinekband.com. I'm on all the streaming sites, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, socials,
Do you have
Facebook.
a Bandcamp as well?
Do have Bandcamp.
We'll
I
have
also
that.
have
Yep.
a Patreon, which is pretty exciting. And
Great.
during the pandemic, I started in April of 2020. And just as kind of like that became my new gig, every week I would post something new, be it a new demo I was working on, unreleased videos. And so since then, I've definitely posted every week. Some have been 2 or 3 times a week. So there's been, I don't know, 300 different posts of content on there that pretty much most of it's unreleased. So really, really proud. And it's just been something personally satisfying because it gives me something to look forward to every week. And that's on my Patreon.
Nice. Well, we're going to have all of those links and all of that info in the comments. Joe, thank you so much for being a guest again on the show. It
Keep
is
doing what you
wonderful
do,
to have you
man.
back. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Will do, folks. This has been Steiner with another episode of Secondhand Talent, and you will catch us again next Wednesday. And that's a podcast. We're done. We're good.
I think you got to call it the Steiner Cast.
Oh no! Stop now.